Hey, what's up everybody, it's Rutech. Today, we'll be talking about the best $1,000 gaming PC that you can get in September of 2020. Now with $1,000, you of course will be able to run all games, both new and old, at both 1080p and 1440p with competitive frame rates, and you'll also be able to run games at 4K at 60 frames per second. If you're spending $1,000, it only makes sense to have an absolute powerhouse of a PC, right? Anyway, in this particular build, we have a high quality upgradable motherboard with 16 gigabytes of RAM, a 10th gen Intel processor with an AIO cooler, and an RTX graphics card, all contained in an awesome NZXT case. I of course will go over the specifics later on in the video, but yes, I will be building this exact PC within the next month. So if you feel iffy on whether or not you want to build this because it's coming from a guy who's talking over a video of gameplay, don't worry, I will build this. I will show exactly how to build it, and I will show benchmarks. But in this video, I want to explain why I chose the parts that I chose and what you should expect from each individual part you buy. So let's start talking about the parts, but before we do, I would really appreciate it if you checked out my channel. I post PC tech videos among other things. Also, if you have any comments or questions as the video goes along, be sure to drop a comment. If you like the video, drop a like, and if you enjoy the content that you're seeing, drop a sub. It really helps out the channel. Okay, so let's kick things off by talking about the CPU. For this build, I chose the Intel i5-10400 processor. It has 6 cores, 12 threads, a base clock of 2.9 GHz, and a boost clock of 4.3 GHz. Now, this processor comes in two versions, the 10400 and the 10400F. They're pretty much the same processor, except one comes with an integrated graphics processor and the other doesn't. Integrated graphics are completely unnecessary for this build, so whichever of the two are cheaper is the one you should buy, so I left a link to both in the description. Anyway, this 10th gen i5 processor is a fantastic chip that of course can easily run any modern game and all upcoming newer games with ease at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K using the graphics card that I chose. Now you may be wondering why an Intel chip over say a Ryzen 3600. Well, for the past week or so, the Ryzen 3600 has jumped in price, unfortunately by a significant amount, like $50 I think. Like it came out of nowhere, but luckily the i5-10400 has basically the same exact performance and in some cases gets higher frame rates than the Ryzen 3600 in certain games. They both had their pros and cons for different things, but one thing I can tell you for certain is that you won't really lose or gain a noticeable amount of performance by choosing one or the other. Just wanted to clear the air about that since I'm sure a good bit of you were probably wondering because most of my builds are usually Ryzen based. The cooler I picked for this CPU is the NZXT M22 AIO cooler. This will seriously keep your CPU super cool since it's an AIO, and it will also compensate for the fact that this case in the build doesn't have the best airflow in the world. It uses a 120mm NZXT fan to cool the radiator, which will send the heat out of the back if that's how you configure this AIO. I'll have more details on this cooler in the build video because it can be a little tricky to install. And next up, the motherboard. I chose BIOSTAR's Z490A Silver, a great board that will not only be compatible with all 10th gen processors, but according to rumors will also be compatible with upcoming 11th gen Intel processors if you decide to upgrade down the road. This BIOSTAR board has 4 RAM slots, a max RAM speed of 4400 MHz with a max capacity of 128 GB of RAM. It also has 2 M.2 slots, so expanding SSD storage will be extremely easy. This also is a really nice looking motherboard. I mean, it's gonna look fantastic when you're looking through the full glass panel of the case we're using in this build. Man, I can't wait to build this thing. Overall though, a great motherboard from a reliable company. In this motherboard, we are installing the Crucial Ballistics RGB 16GB, so 2/6 of 8GB, 3600 MHz RAM. 16 gigabytes is more than enough for modern gaming. It was only last year that a bunch of games started to recommend that you had 12 gigabytes of RAM installed, so 16 gigabytes is easily going to be able to handle not only today's games, but upcoming games too. Also, this RAM is 3600 MHz, so you'll get a bit more of a frame rate boost versus using, for example, 2666 or 3000 MHz RAM. You just need to make sure you activate it in the motherboard's BIOS, which I will explain how to do in the video I make about this PC. Additionally, Crucial's Ballistics RAM lineup is some of the most popular, reliable RAM, so you're getting the top of the line quality with this set of memory. Next up, the storage. Now with storage, keep in mind that it is fully upgradable and you can always throw in other storage devices like another M.2, an external or internal SSD, or even a hard drive. So with this build, I chose one M.2 SSD with the option of a hard drive of any capacity you'd like. So for the M.2, I picked out the Team MS30 512GB solid state drive. this is a pretty obvious choice for me. For starters, I'm a huge fan of Team. They always put out great products with outstanding price to performance ratios, and as you know, price performance is my middle name. Not really, but either way, this 512GB M.2 SSD will not only give you a lot of fast storage, but it also gives you the perfect place to install Windows. By installing Windows on this M.2 SSD, you're getting top of the line speeds with your Windows experience. Boot times will be extremely snappy along with the overall Windows experience. Also, downloading games onto this SSD will allow for very fast loading times when entering maps, which will be totally possible since 512GB is a lot of storage. For the optional hard drive, I chose out the Western Digital CAVIAR Blue 7200 RPM 1TB or 500GB hard drive. Either one works, they give almost identical performance, with the exception being their storage capacity. If you plan on having a huge game library, the 1TB drive is the obvious choice, but if you're just unsure if the 512GB from the MS30 M.2 SSD will be enough, but you don't think you'll end up getting too many games but will need some extra storage, then get the 500GB drive. I've used both, they're phenomenal and extremely reliable, and I always recommend using these before any other internal hard drive. And now the part you've probably been waiting to hear about, the graphics card. So for this build, of course, I chose an RTX card. This PC is going to use the RTX 2060 OC Edition from GIGABYTE. As you'd expect with its price, you'll absolutely be able to play everything with fantastic frame rates at both 1080p and 1440p, and most games at 4K with around 60 frames per second. I'm not going to talk about the benchmarks in this video because I will have exact benchmarks completely ready for you guys in about 2 weeks after I complete the build, so please stay tuned for that. However, if you're impatient, what I recommend for you guys to do to find the closest benchmarks to this build is just Google something like i5 10400 and RTX 2060 benchmarks, and you'll get pretty similar benchmarks to what this PC will output. So again, stay tuned, I will be doing a fully accurate benchmark for this PC in 2 weeks. Next up, let's talk about the case. I chose the NZXT H510 case. Now, I know some of you really don't like this case for its lackluster airflow, which is totally understandable. However, using this case, you will still get perfectly safe thermals and you won't deal with any throttling. Additionally, you do not have to use this case either. You can use any ATX case you would like. The main reason I chose this case is because of how reliable and aesthetically pleasing it is. I have used this case for 2 builds before, and NZXT makes sure that you get the top of the line quality, and in short, it's a reliable, beautiful, minimalist ATX case with a big glass side panel, making it a favorite for many gamers. Finally, we have the power supply. It's pretty clear that this build will draw a good bit of power and should be upgrade ready, so I chose the EVGA BR 600W 80+ bronze certified power supply. EVGA is a favorite company when it comes to power supplies, as they always have had the most reliable power supplies on the market, which is why they're the most popular. With power supplies, you should not mess around. One bad power supply and your whole PC is fried, so it is always a good idea to make sure you get yourself a supply that you can count on. As for its wattage, it has 600 watts of 80+ bronze certified power, so it has more than enough for not only the parts that we talked about in this video, but also any upgrades you guys may want to do in the future. So that will wrap it up for this video. I am super excited to build this PC and get the whole tutorial and benchmark video uploaded for you guys. I really appreciate all the feedback I got on my last build tutorial video, so I will be implementing you guys' suggestions into this video. If you have any more ideas, don't be shy, let me know in the comments. I love feedback. Also, if you plan on building this or have built it, drop a comment. The community and I would love to hear about it. If you haven't joined the Discord yet, be sure to click the Discord link in the description. So yeah, that will do it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Have any comments or questions, drop a comment below and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you enjoy the content that you're seeing, drop a sub. Thanks for watching. Peace out.